So that is the 26-year-old Prince of Wales Bridge carrying the M4 across the River Severn, and it's the most recent means to carry people across what is considered one of the most dangerous estuaries in the UK. And that's for good reason, because today's video contains stories of drowned soldiers, Daniel Defoe, abandoned flooded tunnels and an 800-year-old toll crossing. The estuary has a 50-foot tidal range. That's the second biggest in the world. Now that, combined with the treacherous currents here, mean that it's an extremely dangerous crossing, but it hasn't stopped people for millennia coming up with some really quirky ways to get from one side to the other. Now this is the west side of the estuary, and in particular it's Beachley. It's a little bit that juts out into the estuary itself. Now, the fact that it does jut out into the estuary probably gives us a little bit of context as to why just back up there is one of the first crossing points of the Severn Estuary and potentially the most dangerous. But I'll let you decide that as we head up Beachley. So a little bit further up Beachley and the jutty outy bit, this huge earthwork that I'm walking on now goes right from here all the way up through to North Wales, and it's Offa's Dyke. Now this is supposedly an 8th century border between Mercia and the Welsh kingdoms of the princes. At the top of this hill it comes to the coast, and it's said to link up on the east side with an ancient trackway that came down from the Cotswolds. This stone right here marks the start or the finish, whichever way you come from, of Offa's Dyke, 170 mile pathway right to North Wales. After the retreat of the ice, this route is likely to have been used with primitive rafts, making use of the currents here, the tidal flow carrying them northeast as they came inwards and southwest as the tide went out. The fact that Offa's Dyke was placed here is a good indication that this route did survive through Roman times and onwards until at least the 8th or 9th century. That said, we shouldn't rule out the possibility that the Romans took a very different route across the Severn. On the west side, near Wollaston, there are some ancient trackways heading towards the Severn at the exact spot a Roman villa has been found. To the best of my knowledge and research, there's no such crossing here, and that makes perfect sense. There's quite an expanse here, and we know that the Romans like getting their feet wet. They're like fords. So let's move forward 1,000 years and try and find something a little bit more tangible. The first documented evidence of somebody crossing the estuary was in 1131 AD when Lord of the Manor of Tydenham, Winebold de Ballon, gave permission to the monks of Tintern to cross to Aust by ferry. Now, over the centuries this became known as the Old Passage. Now remember that as we head south, that's quite important. So this part of the estuary just here is called Severn Beach, and there's a few amenities for families and that. Now, based on what we know about that body of water just there, I wouldn't be bringing my kids to this beach to play. And that's key here, because despite that being referred to as New Passage, it's possible that it was used before the Old Passage, so the Old Passage could be newer than the New Passage. Anyway, in 1625 Cromwell closed the New Passage, or what was then that passage, because of an incident with a number of parliamentary troops who became marooned out on the English stones and died. That route didn't open again for 73 years when it became known as the New Passage. Such was the danger of the ferries at the time Daniel Defoe wrote. The sea was so broad, the fame of the bore of the tide so formidable. The wind also made water so rough, and, which was worse, the boats to carry over both man and horse appeared so very mean that, in short, none of us cared to venture. So we came back and resolved to keep on the road to Gloucester. It took another 85 years for the next attempt to traverse the Severn. This one was commercially backed. Could we finally have a safe means of crossing this estuary? We're a good 10-15 miles further north, the village of Newham behind us, or the town of Newham, and the churchyard here, and the year is 1810. Now, a very early railway was built in that year at the Bullowpill Tramway. Now, that brought goods from the Forest of Dean all the way down to the coast here and then moved them up and down the estuary on boats onto the mainland of the UK. Part of that early railway at the time was the longest tunnel in the world, so they were full of confidence. So what would stop them from building another tunnel under the Severn to get to the mainland a lot quicker? Roger Tipping and his team were tasked with just that, so they set about building another tunnel, this time underwater. But it didn't work. Within a year or so, they'd made it at least halfway across the estuary there. But unfortunately, when they got to a specific point, the water ingress occurred at such a rate that a couple of the workers there narrowly escaped with their lives. The project was abandoned. They couldn't pump the water out fast enough. In fact, one of the shafts for that actual tunnel that was used to pump water out still survives on the coast edge to this day. The tide's coming in quite fast. I was going to go and have a look for it, but I don't think I'll make it. Move forward a couple of decades and we still have no tunnel and no bridge, just some rather ropey ferries. In 1825 the New Passage Association formed and decided to invest in a 30-ton steamboat. This would have been great if the dastardly Duke of Beaufort hadn't invested in some boats on the Aust Old ferry route, meaning quicker, shorter service. All was not lost, however, for the New Passage, 1863, and the coming of the railways, the Bristol and Wales Union Railway, and they utilised the ferry, one of two ferries, to cross the water. You could embark from your train just up there and re-embark just here. I say just here, I just mean just out there on a purpose-built pier. You'd then head that way, through the cutting that's just below this bridge, under this bridge, round the curve, and you join the main line, carry on your journey into the rest of South Wales. Now that's all good, but people don't like getting on and off a train. People like a journey that takes them from A to B. So is it about time we had a bridge? It's 1879 and it's time for that bridge. It was an ill-fated bridge because you'd think a bridge that would save you miles on a journey between Bristol and Cardiff would actually be really popular, but it wasn't. The lack of join-up to the network, the mineral depression perhaps accounting for its lack of use. That's not the most tragic reason though for this bridge's failure. And here we are. It's been quite a walk to get here, I can tell you. So this is the centre column for what would have been here, represented here by this swing bridge, and then out to the estuary you'd have had 21 spans over the other side. Now the biggest issue potentially for this bridge was the year of its construction. Parliamentary approval was given for a tunnel, the GWR tunnel, 134 years on, that still survives today. And so the final nail in the coffin for this ill-fated Severn Bridge. It was a night, it was thick fog, two barges laden with fuel crashed into two of the centre pillars of the 21 spans of the bridge, causing gas rupture. The electric line was ruptured on the bridge just 17 minutes over the final passenger train had crossed it. And of course the pillars crashed onto the boats and the boats exploded. 5 crew were killed, 3 survived. and the relics of which can still be seen at low tide today. And of course, that did indeed mark the final nail in the coffin for this crossing. And here we are full circle, back between the two crossings, the M4 just down there, the M48 just ahead of me now. The M48 bridge being built in 1966, and until that point, if you wanted to get your car here across the Severn Estuary, you'd have to take the famous Ulst to Beachley ferry. Now that was after 1931, and it would set you back around 6 to 12 shillings, and of course it would save your journey around about 2.5 hours from going north. In 2018, perhaps one of the most significant things happened here with these most recent crossings. In December of that year, they collected their last toll, which meant that was the first time in around 800 years that it didn't cost you a penny to cross the Severn Estuary. So thanks for watching that little production. It took about 2 months to film and edit that one, quite a long one we've had on in the background for a while.
And if you like the type of things that we do, you can support the channel by clicking in the doobly-doo below. You'll find our Patreon link, and also you can press the join button on YouTube.
Indeed. So if you're new here, we also want to let you know that we produce weekly videos, so make sure you click on subscribe because you will get weekly content.
And the notification bell.
Indeed, yes. Without further ado, we'll see you next week.